Yup, and welcome back. Talking Huskies, player profile and projections. We're crescendoing towards the finish line with a vital player for the Yukon Huskies team, Christian Vital. There's a terrible joke. The third-year guard is going to be a huge part of this Huskies team, whether they sink or swim. We're hoping swim. We're going to talk about his past years. We're going to talk about what we're expecting this year with KT Sharp. Let's talk Huskies. Intro. Hello, hey, hi, how are you? Welcome back. If you've been listening to Player Profile and Projections, we thank you very much. As always, I am joined by the Queen of Stats, Katie Sharp. Katie, how are you?
It's great. It's a great week, isn't it? I mean, this is it. This is the first week of the season. We definitely have something to look forward to. On Thursday, and I'm getting fired up.
And it's keep the fired up thing rolling. It's funny. In my head, I have an image of Christian Vital, and I have him hustling. I have him being from the Bronx. I have him being tough. I have him missing a lot of shots. I have him making a lot of shots. And I'm a big game log guy. As I started drooling the other day over some of Tyler Polley's stats. Man, if you start right to left in the box score with this guy, I mean, you think special things. He put up a 30-point effort against BU, 29 against Columbia. He's got 22 at Tulsa. He's got a bunch of 20-point games, a lot of games in the teens. It's easier to count the games he's not in double digits than he is in double digits. I think the only way to say it is he's an inefficient scorer, which is a very ironic term in nowadays basketball.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has a lot of room to improve. I mean, you look at his percentages, 48% from two, which is not bad. 32% from three, which is definitely an area of improvement that he needs to make. Whether it's shot selection or whatever you want to say. But I think that if he's going to take his game to another level, he needs to become more of a perimeter threat, more efficient from beyond the arc, I think.
Yeah, so last year you mentioned a couple of the stats there. He finishes at 14.9 points per game, 5.4 rebounds for a little guy.
Yeah, he led the team. He led the team, I think, in rebounding average. It's
pretty wild. Listed at 6'2", and that feels generous when you see him on the court. No offense, I would take 6'2". 1.6 steals, 1.8 turnovers. And basically, he's been a staple in the backcourt for 2 seasons now. And I think it's funny because I went back and I wanted to look this up for myself. And I don't, you're normally the stats here, Katie, but I don't. Did you happen to look up his recruiting class?
I did not. No, I didn't look at that one.
So this was
Enlighten me. Let's go.
This was the 2016 player committed recruiting class. And this was kind of supposed to be Ali's big class. And I guess, again, TFA, things fall apart. But Al-Tariq Gilbert, he was the big recruit from that class. He was the number 6 point guard coming out. We've talked about him. He's had the injury history. The 2 and 3 recruits were Juwan Durham and Vance Jackson. Both ended up transferring out. Durham's at Notre Dame. Jackson's at New Mexico now, which has been a pretty good basketball program of its own. And the 4th guy, so these were all ESPN 100 recruits, was Mamadou Diarra, who we've talked about, who's had injuries and other NCAA restrictions. And then there's Christian Vital, who is one of those guys, and I feel like there's been these guys in UConn history that you see, they come in, and this was a big Calhoun thing. And we're going to bring up Uncle Jimmy a lot on this podcast. But if you hustle, if you're tough, if you play defense, if if you fit your role and do what you're asked, you're going to get minutes. If you can grab 5.5 rebounds per game as a 6'2", as a generously listed 6'2" guard, you're going to play. So now we come in where he's looking like he's not going to be a guy that can see the court. So he plays 29 minutes per game his freshman year. He comes in next year. He plays 32 minutes per game last year, and I think I don't want to give him an excuse because I'm a big believer in shooting percentages. Your percentages have to be higher than they were.
Mm-hmm.
But within that offense, we've talked about the lack of creativity and everything in Ali's offense. And I guess the role he was thrusted into, there's a little bit of an excuse for the percentages, but we need to see a leap this year, and at least we saw a leap in the 2-point shot last year.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was encouraging. I think where he can really also improve is in transition. I was just looking at some of his numbers, and he was really inefficient in transition. Was not able. Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I was just going through some of these numbers. Let me pull them up here. They're pretty ugly. 2-point jumpers in transition, 1 for 6. Small sample, but you got to make more than that. 3-pointers in transition. This should be his bread and butter. I mean, this is, maybe Adams leading the break, finding him on the wing, within, a couple passes down the court. 9 for 47 on 3-pointers in transition. It's 22% or 20%, actually, less than 20%. And so, that's obviously an area where I think it really hurt him in terms of his shooting from beyond the arc. Is that he wasn't able to find that rhythm. And we know that this UConn team is hopefully going to be, pretty fast. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to get out on the break a lot. Hopefully they're going to be a solid transition team, and they're going to need Vital to improve in that area.
And I'm getting excited, Katie Sharp, because I've mentioned a couple times that Hurley's coming in clean slate. He doesn't care that Tariq Gilbert was a much bigger recruit than Christian Dittal at this point. And again, how I mentioned, I love Basketball Reference. That's where I've been looking at the college sports reference pages. And take names out of it. Mm-hmm. And right now, what I'm looking at is a guy who was a freshman who averaged 9.1 points per game, 2 assists, 3.5 rebounds. Next year, he averages basically 15 and 5. I mean, as a junior, if he can be more efficient on the 3-point shot, because the 2-point shot makes sense. He comes in, he's a freshman, he shoots 43% from 2. He's a sophomore. He comes in, he shoots 48% on 4.5 shots per game from 2. The 3-point percentage dropped significantly, 36% to 32%, but he was taking 2 more threes a game. I mean, it just feels like, and I guess I've been kind of mentally blocking because as a UConn fan, I'm in shock from what's happened the past couple years. But this guy can get to the free throw line, and when he's there, he makes them, and he's efficient. Mm-hmm. If this guy can be efficient from 3-point land and progress just generally how a sophomore would progress to being a junior, this guy's an extremely talented player.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he could easily be a 20-point guy. I mean, he's going to play a ton. I mean, hopefully he'll play a ton. I mean, I'm not sure what the rotation is, how the rotation is going to shake out. But like you said, he's great at getting to the free throw line. His free throw rate is 40%, which is tremendous. That's, it's a ratio of free throw attempts to field goal attempts, which is well above average for a guard. He shot 85% from the free throw line.
Yeah, and so on 5 attempts a game. That's 4 free points every game.
Yep. And so like I think what we're saying is, and I think a lot of it has to do with shot selection in terms of his threes. And we all know that he has that swagger. He has that confidence. Yeah. And I think it's going to be his ability to kind of harness that, and that competitiveness, or, being that alpha male, and his, if he can do that, I think that we can see, kind of maybe even have another breakout season for him.
Yeah, and I've talked about in previous episodes how I'm interested to see how Hurley uses all these guards. Whether point guard's kind of a rotation or the 2 guard or however it ends up looking. I think with Vital, if I'm the coach here, I mean the assist numbers stayed pretty much the same: 1.8 as a freshman, 1.7 as a sophomore in 32 minutes, and as an undersized guard. And I'm not saying this in a bad way, but it seems like you don't have that point guard hat on, which is fine. And now that I'm seeing these numbers and really analyzing them, I think you just tell Christian, hey, man, you're going to be off the ball this year and do your thing and try to be more efficient, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, he doesn't need to have any sort of ball handling responsibilities. They've got plenty of depth there in the backcourt. So if he can just kind of focus on his shot, I think what it could also hinge on is the ability of the front court guys to kind of draw the big men down low, away from draw the big men down low, open up the perimeter for him. And I think that's that could be huge. And also, as I mentioned before, making those threes in transition, those should be money shots. Those should be money shots for him. And he really struggled in that area last year.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see. And again, I get sucked into these box scores and game logs. There's a game that jumps out to me towards the end of the year at Temple where he throws up a 2 for 12, and that if you shoot the basketball, sometimes that happens. But that game, he ended up grabbing 12 rebounds, and I think that's. I'm not going to say how Christian Vital is going to be remembered, but when I say tough guy from the Bronx earned his minutes, that's what I'm saying. And it just seems like if he can condense a couple of his poor shooting games, and he really opened the season shooting poorly last year. In his first 6 games, he shot 28% from the field. So if you take those games out and you start, game 7 through the rest of the year, I think they're more of what we'd expect from him this year. You're still not going to see a great shooting percentage, but you'd like to get north of 40%. Do you think that's possible? Am I expecting too much?
I'm not sure about 40% from 3. One encouraging thing is on KenPom and KenPom.com. It's a great site for advanced stats. What he does is he actually breaks it up between his overall percentages, but then he breaks out the different opponents into like a tier A and a tier B.
Okay.
The higher quality opponents, and he actually shot better against those higher quality opponents from 3. Slightly better. It was. If you look at overall, he was at 32%. He was about 35% against the tier A opponents, which is a sample of about 10 games. So there's some encouraging signs there for him. But I think 40%. I would probably take the under on 40% from 3 for him. But I definitely think
I meant from the field. Excuse me, Kate.
From the field. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. He has to do better than over. He has to do better than 40% from the field. Yeah, I would take the over on that.
Okay. Yeah, and that's.
I think just maturing as a player. I mean, he was pretty immature last year. We know some of his antics, celebrations, very ill-timed celebrations. But from what I've read from some of the stuff that I've read this summer and this fall, I think he's taken a step forward in terms of maturity. I think that Hurley has helped him with that. And being humbled, I think, when he sort of tested the NBA waters, I think he's gonna become more of a man, hopefully, during the season.
Wow, calling out manhood, Katie.
I am.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess something I'm going to be watching early. We've been saying this about some of the players, and it's been a little wishy-washy because we're saying, hey, if Tyler Polley scores 20 early, he could be our 3rd best scorer. But that's kind of easy to say. For Vital, because he's going to drive and be tough and go to the basket and try to get free throws and try to make the aggressive layups. It's going to be interesting to see if if he doesn't start the year shooting well from three, if Hurley's going to try to almost reel that in and try to tell him to take that away from part of his game, or if Hurley's going to say, we're going to be at our best if you can make these shots. So keep on keeping on.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting. I'm of the, I kind of want him to just keep taking the shots. I think that's a way to give a guy confidence and say, hey, we have confidence in you. Keep going. We know that we know that you can make shots, and just keep pelting away.
I like that. Yeah, and I guess the other thing we need to mention is that we don't fully. I'm a broken record on this. We don't know what Hurley's offense looks like. We get it, Jake. But it is a crowded backcourt. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it's not a very crowded front court. So we think we're going to see a lot of 3 and 4 guard sets. So it's tough, and you wouldn't think playing time would become an issue. But I guess you could see a world where, hey, if Jalen Adams, Terrence Smith, and Tariq Gilbert are having good games, and you need big bodies out there, you could see a situation where that backcourt could get crowded pretty quick, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen any projected, starting rotations, but they have a lot of depth at guard, and especially what if Brendan Adams, the freshman, comes out and starts shooting threes, making them, and just hitting daggers.
Yeah,
we don't know. I mean, he's definitely a highly rated recruit, and it has that potential. So I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes out the first couple games.
Well, I think sometimes we run into over-unders, or we're comparing different players. I guess for Vital, this is tough for me because it feels like if Tariq's going to be on the court a lot, that could cut into his opportunity, or that could present better shots if Tariq can handle the rock. How about this? The over-under is 20, and it's for points and rebounds.
Ooh. I'm gonna take the over on that.
You're in on that?
I'm in on the over.
Okay. Yeah,
he definitely has a knack for getting those long rebounds. And I think that he can increase his scoring average even from last year's 15 per.
Yeah, and this is unfair because I forget. I think I did this comparison with Poly, but when I'm looking at these game logs, there's not a lot of zeros. The only zero is normally the block column, but there's steals, assists, rebounds. This guy gets in the action. He's got that Bronx, throw up the X mentality. It's gonna be interesting. I would love, and in his head, you're right. And this could be a scary thing. If I'm Christian Vital, I'm saying, I think I'm going to score 20 per game this year. I went from 9 to 15. I'm putting up 20 this year.
Well, I mean, he has what I've heard, deemed that athletic arrogance. He's got that. He might be the most competitive person on the team, from his background and from what he showed last year. And so I think he's up to any challenge that Hurley's going to give him.
Yeah, and he seems like a guy that any coach would fall in love with. He's one of the first guys on the floor. He's 6'2". He wants to rebound. For the over/under 20, I'm going to go over as well, but I think it's going to be super close. I think it's going to be about 15 and 5. And I mentioned that he shot poorly from the field to start the year last year in those first 6 games. If you take out those first 6 games, he averaged 16.4 and almost 6 rebounds. So he was one of the, I don't want to say one of the few bright spots as the season went on. But if he can tighten that up a little bit efficiency-wise, and again, those last 26 games, so this isn't a small sample size, he shot 34% from 3 on 7 shots, which is not where we want it to be, but looks a lot better than that 31%. So
Absolutely.
I think you can definitely have the optimistic hat on with Vital. It will be interesting to see how the backcourt settles a little bit. But at the same time, like I said, and I keep saying if I'm Hurley, I'm saying, Vital, you're going to be off the ball this year. When you're talking to Jalen and Terrence Smith, you're probably telling those guys you're going to have to do a little both. There's days where you're going to have to run it. There's days where you're going to have to be off the ball. And if you're talking to Al Tariq, you kind of have him in that point guard lane. Now that I have Vital in that shooting guard lane, I think I'm more optimistic for his season. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, if he can just kind of focus on that aspect of his offense, I think that's going to help him a lot.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. Well, I'm with a lot of these. I find myself more excited than I was coming in.
Good.
Any closing thoughts, Katie?
No. I mean, I think that he's, like I said, I think he could be an X factor. I mean, live and die by the three. And if he can kind of just harness that confidence, that swagger, just a little bit, so he can improve his shot selection, I think that he can take another leap.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how machismo and personalities play on this 2017 UConn team, because I think in the ideal world, we think Jalen's the alpha, and then everyone else kind of takes their turn when they're asked. Like you said, though, hey, Christian Vital's probably telling himself he wants to average 20 this year. He dipped his toe in the NBA waters last year. It's I doubt he's going back home at night and saying, you know what, I'm going to let Jalen just be the alpha,
Exactly. I mean, he has that alpha male in him. Oh, yeah. It is strong.
It's right. It's oozing out, and we don't dislike that. All right. I think we covered our buddy Christian Vital pretty well. Hey, if you guys have thoughts or comments, tweet at us at KT Sharp, literally the letters KT, at myself, at Talking Jake. Leave a review at us. Tell us Christian Vital is going to average 30. As long as you put 5 stars, I'll take that. And if you've been listening, we appreciate you. If you're new to it, you can dig back. We've been doing player profiles on a chunk of the UConn men's team. We've got a UConn women's episode, and we're going to have a season preview coming up that's going to lead into our weekly episode tracking this 2018-2019 UConn men's and women's basketball season. So we appreciate you. Tell a friend, maybe. And either way, hopefully you'll be listening to us soon. Thank you very much for Katie Sharp, Jake Storielli. Let's go Huskies.
Let's go Huskies.
Sweet.
Good. Yeah, good with the Twitter handles. We got to keep promoting those.
Yeah, I know. It's a weird mix of not wanting to overpump that.
No, I understand.
But
every once in a while, yeah. I think once we get a Twitter handle for the pod, I think that'll help a lot too.
Yeah, and
we'll figure that out.
When I in the Boneyard, I meant to mention that. So I tweeted out, hey, here's the link, blah blah blah, little mini bios, and that was one of the first replies was like, hey, what's your guys' Twitter? So I posted your and my Twitter accounts, and I said, yeah, we'll have our own, Twitter for it coming soon. We wanted to focus on, getting quality podcast stuff out there first. So,
I think people either subscribe to it or they follow the pod on Twitter, and they'll just, play whenever.
Yeah,
they'll like the tweet when it goes out, and then they can look at their liked tweets later and kind of play them.
Yeah, and we I know we tip of the iceberg with some of the sales stuff too, but we also have a shop, so we can think of some silly and creative UConn shirts. We're more than
that's
that
right.
kind of stuff too.
Yeah, I'm totally with that.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little, I don't know. I guess there's like with the Yankees stuff, we can't use the Yankees logo and Knicks logo and things like that. But I guess
I don't know what the restriction. I would have to look at the college.
Yeah,
licensing. I think it's the same at the college licensing. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't probably use logos. You could probably use names and stuff if you wanted, but that almost seems not
the player
right.
names. I mean, just because you can't even.
Yeah.
Yeah, the NCAA whole.
Unless it's a fun shirt. So that's kind of for another time.
Yeah.
But I think maybe I can set up the Twitter this weekend, and then maybe Monday we can announce the Twitter account and give everyone a go follow, something like that.
Yeah, I'll probably tweet out a couple things this weekend.
Yeah.
Just kind of promoting the pod again.
What time's the game on? Is that on TV anywhere over there?
It's not on TV. I mean, I don't know. I don't get the local channels.
Right. You're in Boston, yeah.
It's not. It's definitely streaming on radio. Okay. I know it's definitely streaming on radio. I saw one of the Twitter guys tweeting that out. You can also get it through the university website, the radio stream. Cool. There might be a live stream on the radio on the athletics site. The UConn site.
Okay.
I don't know if you have to pay. I don't know what their deal is.
I'll have to keep my ears open for that. Have a Knicks and UConn night.
Yeah. I'm sorry I can't be a Knicks fan.
You're fine. You're not missing much.
Never got into them just because of UConn. I mean, that was our team.
Yeah. So. You saved your year.
I know.
Yourself
apparently.
2 decades of futility, basically.
Apparently, yeah.
But that's okay. All right, Jalen Adams, the grand finale.
Let's do it.
All right, let me double check my statistics and box scores and info. Wow. Only 3 games, not in double digits last year.
Yeah. Yep. 27 of 30. Right. 9 20-pointers, I think. What was it? No, 12 20-pointers.
Jalen played 40 minutes a lot. This is going to be interesting. I'm excited.
Yeah.
All right, you ready?
All right, I'm ready.
Let's rock it. Where am I? Yup! And welcome back. Our final of the player profile and projection series. Jalen Adams, the lead guard for Connecticut. I think that'll be an interesting part of this discussion to what that really means. Joined by Katie Sharp to talk about the now senior Jalen Adams and what his outlook looks like for the senior season. It's going to be with the new coach. Hopefully more help around him this season and an offensive scheme that can help him. We obviously have giant hopes for Jalen Adams. Let's see if KT Sharp can reel me in with realism. Let's talk Huskies. Thank you for joining us, and welcome back to Talking Huskies, the final player profile and projection. Katie Sharp. Katie, are you sad? How are you?
No, there is no sadness. There is only excitement.
Only excitement in the air. The 6'3" combo guard from Roxbury, Massachusetts, Jalen Adams. I'll do a quick history report to set you up. Number 20 recruit coming out, 2015, Jalen Adams, the next guy in line. Averages 7.3 as a freshman, 14.4 as a sophomore with 6 assists. Last year, we saw the assists drop down to 4.7, but the points go up to 18.1 points per game. 32% from 3. We don't love that on 5 threes a night. 48% on the 2 ball. Didn't get to the free throw line a ton, but still got there. And he's Jalen Adams. He's the heart and soul of the team. He was the team last year, Katie.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this guy, he played 88% of the minutes, the total minutes, one of the highest rates in the conference. He took 30% of the shots, the team shots, while he was on the floor. That was the second highest in the conference, I believe, behind Rob Gray, the guard from Houston.
Okay.
And I mean, that is a huge load, and honestly, it was too much of a load for him, I think. And so I think that is definitely one of the things that I am going to be looking forward to this season, is to see how Hurley's new offense allows him to be more of an efficient scorer, by giving, obviously it depends on Tariq Gilbert
Yes.
being able to handle the point guarding duties, and letting Adams shift more towards his natural scoring role off ball.
Yeah, and I mentioned it in Vital's player profile preview, but I've talked multiple times how while doing these I stumble into answers and more questions, but I think the answer here is what I said last time. Tariq point guard is going to be the point guard. Tariq Gilbert is going to be the point guard. And Jalen, Taron Adams are going to take turns kind of being combo guard. I think Jalen was in a tough spot last year because he sees himself averaging 6.1 assists as a sophomore, and he has NBA dreams. And if you're a 6'3" guy that can handle the rock, you have a much better chance to make it as a point guard than a two. But I think what we're going to see from Jalen this year is, we're going to have guys that can play the point, and I think NBA scouts know you can pass it and dribble it if you want to. This is a special year to separate yourself as a scorer. Does that seem right? Are you expecting more from him as a point guard as well, or what?
No, I think it will be better for him if he can do less as a point guard. I mean, you could make an argument that maybe no one in college basketball over the last maybe 2 seasons has had a larger responsibility for his team in terms of scoring, and running the offense and setting everything up for his teammates. I mean, it was enormous. You heard those numbers that I said earlier, and I think that just put a lot of demands on him. A lot of wear and tear, and I think that it's going to be, he's gonna take another leap this season if he can, have be that off ball attacking role, getting to the basket. That is really where he thrives, especially in transition. I think that if he can kind of harness that ability, it's going to do wonders for him.
Yeah, and I guess something I'm trying to talk myself into right now, and I can't tell if I'm being a UConn fanboy or not. So I'll pass it to you and see if you set me straight. So he comes down from 6.1 assists as the sophomore. The role changes last year. I mean, they needed him to score.
Mm-hmm.
They needed him to score. And so senior year, we both agree that off ball is going to be more so the play for him. But I still think I want to see him land around 5 assists or so. And again, this ties to what's the offense look like, and all of that stuff. But I think Jalen Adams, with his driving ability, his threat on the perimeter, in the break, he's a guy that, as the off-ball attacking guard, he should still be able to stumble into 5 assists, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a natural scorer, but he also, I think, over the last 2 seasons has shown the ability to handle the ball and to find his teammates. And he was not working with a great group of teammates.
Yes.
Confirmed. And so absolutely, I think that he can. I mean, he's still going to get his assists, but I think he's going to become even more. I think it's going to help him from three. I think he's going to become a more efficient 3-point shooter when he doesn't have to worry about distributing the ball, when he can just kind of improve his spot up shooting. But you were talking about him in terms of how much of a load he the three games that he scored in single digits. UConn got blown out against SMU, Temple, and Tulsa. I mean, those were 3 horrible games, and so you really see they depended on him way too much last year, and he probably knew it, but there was really no other options.
Yeah, I know the most confident I was in a UConn basketball game last year was if it was a close game and they were just going Jalen Adams, try to run a pick and roll. We're not even sure who's going to set you the screen. Uh, but, I mean, that was basically our best offensive play throughout the season, which, again, uh, is mostly a bad thing than a good thing. But, yeah, that was the first thing I mentioned to you pre-show on how pretty his game logs truly are. You mentioned to me 12, 20-point games, only 3 games not in double digits. I mean, that's an elite player.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think just kind of looking at where he needs to improve. I think one area we kind of mentioned that he is great attacking the basket and getting in the paint, but he was pretty underwhelming in terms of his ability to draw contact in the paint. His free throw rate, I've mentioned that earlier as a stat. It was only 20% last year. So his ratio of free throws to field goal attempts, you'd like to see that number in the 40s for a guard, especially. So I think that he's got a lot of room to improve there. And he's a very competent free throw shooter. I believe shot 80% from the line. So if he can kind of draw that contact, become even more aggressive in getting to the basket, I think that's going to help, and especially without the load of thinking about distributing the ball. That's another leap that he can take.
Yeah, and I mean I have to say that was a number that I was kind of shocked to see that Christian Vital went to the line 2 more times a game than Jalen Adams.
About twice as much in terms of on a rate basis.
I would have lost that bet, which isn't shocking to myself. But I don't know. I guess we can do a lot with numbers, and I think there'd be an over-under of maybe 20, and I think you and I are both optimistic enough that we'd probably make that bet. I guess with Jalen, and this starts tying into why I wanted to do this with you, Katie. This ties into UConn and point guards and the soul of the team and almost what your legacy is. I mean, this guy is preseason first team All AAC. He has to be in the running for it. UCF had the preseason player of the year in the AAC. I mean, if you're a UConn fan, I think everyone in the back of their heads is thinking, we're UConn, right? Like, we got the new coach. We've got the guy that's proven he can do it at a program like URI, who's been a little brother to UConn going back to when my dad went to University of Connecticut. One of his favorite chants that he shared with me, Katie, and thank God we have the explicit next to our name, but it was URI, URI, URINE. The yelling urine from the stands in the 1970s. Times were a little different back then. But, I mean, this guy, stopped me from thinking that he shouldn't be in the running to be an All-American, never mind All-AAC.
I'm going to walk you off the ledge a little bit there. I actually think it will be better if he is not in the running for player of the year, because that means that there are more players contributing besides him, and he is not the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, and the number 4 option in the offense. And I think that's hopefully what we're going to see is a better offensive scheme from Hurley, improved flow. He's got more playmakers around him, hopefully, where he doesn't have to be the Trae Young. He doesn't have to be the Colin Sexton. That might get you into the tournament, but that's not a winning formula. We're all about winning here at UConn, right?
I like that.
So I actually think that it might be better if he's not a player of the year candidate. Although, if he is, that probably means that he's scoring 25 points a game, which you can't argue with that.
Again,
I'm not going to tell him to shoot. I'm not going to tell him to stop scoring.
if he's doing that and the other guys also improve, that would be
exactly.
Good. But and this is a feeling I think I'm going to have to get used to. But I think you're very much right, Katie. I think it's a lot more important for this team to have Jalen Adams be AAC first team and Christian Vital be AAC second team than have Jalen Adams be, second team All-American or something like that. That was a great point. So touche, Katie. You unfortunately did talk me out of that. I mean, what else needs to be to be said about Jalen Adams? And I don't know if you want to go into legacy stuff that I dipped my toe into a little bit, but it's his senior year. This UConn team's been on the ropes a little bit. I mean, we're either going to look back at Jalen Adams as kind of yeah, he was good, but it never panned out, or there's a chance we end this year saying it happened. Like we can talk about him like AJ Price and all those good UConn point guards.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I think it's going to come down to the team win-loss record.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been a tremendous player, but his teams have been below 500. I mean, he's had two losing seasons the last 2 years, and unless they can get above 500, I can't see him having a super high legacy at UConn, which is unfortunate because he just hasn't had the talent around him that he's needed.
Yeah, now I've gotten sucked back into the stats, and his 2-point percentage rate went up last year after staying kind of steady freshman and sophomore, even though his usage went up. 3-point shot, slightly different story. He went from three attempted threes. Hello, as a sophomore, hitting them at a 35% clip, which is solid, to jumping up to 5 a game at a 32 clip, which, again, you don't like to see that. But again, we think this all ties into how much of the load was on his shoulder, and hopefully finding easier shots, more efficient shots. And again, I'm shocked how many of these have come back to Tariq Gilbert being healthy. But wow, would that be huge for Jalen Adams?
I know. I mean, and we saw it last year. Their first few games last year, the first 5 or 6 games when Gilbert was in the lineup, they were actually really competitive.
Yeah.
And they were giving Oregon a game when he went down. So I think Gilbert's going to be a huge X factor, not just for the entire team, but obviously for what Adams can produce.
Yeah. And
We've talked about it, but yeah.
I know we're getting sucked into the whole team, but I guess to put the knot on Jalen Adams, it's unfair for me to give you an over/under or vice versa, because I mean, this is a guy that has a chance his senior year to be remembered as, Kemba, Napier, Ben Gordon, AJ Price. Hell, I'll throw Ricky Moore in there. Khalid. Yes. He has a chance to be remembered as a UConn great. And if the season goes the other way, it's almost going to be enigmatic to a degree. So I'm not going to make us put any expectations on it. If Jalen Adams has a good year, it's highly likely that UConn's going to have a chance to go to the tournament. If he has too much of a good year, like you mentioned, that could also be a bad thing, because that means the team isn't there around him. But we've been putting in Hurley we trust. I think in Jalen we have to trust at this point, because he is the one.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of his goals should be to lead this team to at least a 500 record, and the NCAA tournament. That should be a person. That should actually be a personal goal.
500 record out of here, Katie. I can't hear that.
I mean, I'll take it. I don't care. But yeah, I think that should actually be a personal goal for him in terms of his senior leadership. And we know, he's had a few incidents in the past, and he definitely needs to improve that.
Yeah. Yeah, I really don't think there's much more to say. We're optimistic. The only thing that I want to beat the drum on again that you said to start the show. I mean, 38 minutes per game. This guy went wire to wire a few games. I didn't mention it, but he was grabbing 4 rebounds tonight. He had a couple double-digit rebound games. I And again, I'm putting all this pressure on Jalen Adams to join that crew I mentioned, but a lot of that is going to be dictated by the crew around him. So I guess to close my Jalen Adams, he's going to be good if the guys around him can all take a step up. Jalen Adams can be great. Hot take. Hot take.
I will second that hot take.
Second that.
I'll put some more flames on the fire there.
There you go. I again think I have to wrap it up because otherwise it's just going to be myself trying to talk myself into Jalen Adams being an All-American.
No.
But Katie, thank you so much for doing these with me. So excited to see where Jalen Adams lands. I think he's got a great opportunity to really score this year. And then that might help him translate that to the next level because we've seen the handle, we've seen the passing ability. But hopefully he brings it this year, and hopefully we're dancing. But for the player profile and projections, I think that's a wrap. If you've listened to all of them or some of them or just this one, heck, we appreciate you. And we're excited. We're going to be rolling into our weekly episodes, doing recaps of the games and some stats and what we liked, what we disliked. Hopefully turning that into maybe twice a week with some interviews and things of that nature. So thank you for tuning in. If you've subscribed, awesome. If you haven't, please subscribe. Tell a friend. Leave a review. All the good stuff. Follow KT Sharp on Twitter. Follow me. For KT Sharp, for myself. Thank you guys so much. We're excited to be talking to you soon. And as always, let's go Huskies.
Let's go Huskies.
Sweet.
All right.